The marble floors echoed as the courtroom filled. Reporters whispered, pens and eyes poised. The judge's bench sat high and wide at the front, the seal of Georgia looming like an eye over justice. Above all this sat Judge Roy Moore, known for his hardline decisions and quick dismissals. He leaned back in his chair like a man ready to swat away another gnat in the form of a young defendant. This time, the gnat was Miles Brown, 19 years old, standing in an oversized suit and worn-out sneakers at the defense table. Thin, but not frail. Quiet but not timid. Miles had the kind of gaze that made people second-guess their assumptions. But no one in the room gave him the benefit of the doubt. The charge? Grand theft auto. A brand new Mercedes-Benz G-Class, stolen from a gas station and abandoned a few blocks away. The arresting officers claimed they caught Miles fleeing the scene. His public defender, Erica Monroe, looked overwhelmed just breathing in the room. Judge Moore tapped his gavel. Judge Moore, let's get this over with. Mr. Bragg, proceed. The prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, slick in a tailored suit and smooth in his delivery, rose confidently. Alvin Bragg, Your Honor, we will prove that the defendant was apprehended in close proximity to the stolen vehicle. His fingerprints were on the steering wheel. Officer reports place him at the scene. This was not a case of mistaken identity. This was a case of a young man making a poor decision and now trying to avoid accountability. The words were sharp, clean, and designed to lock a jury's attention. The gallery nodded. Even the bailiff smirked. But Miles didn't flinch. He had rehearsed this day in his mind, not because he expected to stand accused, but because his mother, Monica Brown, a career paralegal, raised him on the stories of broken systems and buried truths. While other kids learned cheat codes for video games, Miles studied court transcripts. While others stayed up watching sports, he listened to podcasts about wrongful convictions. His hero wasn't a rapper or an athlete, it was Thurgood Marshall. When Erica Monroe stood to speak, she only managed. Erica Monroe, Your Honor, my client. Miles gently touched her elbow. She turned, startled. Miles, it's okay. I've got this. A hushed wave passed over the courtroom. Judge Moore, raising an eyebrow, You're saying you want to represent yourself? Miles, Yes, Your Honor. There was a beat of silence. Then soft snickering from the gallery. Alvin Bragg, Well, this should be entertaining. Judge Moore sighed. Judge Moore, You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. All right, Mr. Brown. The floor is yours. Miles stepped forward. No papers. No laptop. Just him and a head full of knowledge. Miles, before I respond to the prosecution's claims, I'd like to verify something. Mr. Bragg, you referenced Officer Darnell Hayes's written testimony stating he saw me behind the wheel. Bragg, that's correct. Miles, and you've submitted that testimony as core evidence? Bragg, I have. Miles turned to Judge Moore. Miles, then I request a verification of Officer Hayes's GPS log from the night of the arrest. Judge Moore, on what grounds? Miles, because Officer Hayes wasn't where he said he was. He wasn't even assigned to that sector until hours after the vehicle was found. If he claimed otherwise in a sworn statement, that's perjury. The courtroom stirred. Bragg stiffened. Judge Moore, Counselor Bragg, do you object? The pause. Just long enough. Bragg, we have no objection. But it was already too late. That hesitation? The jury saw it. So did the judge. Miles pressed forward. Miles, you want to talk fingerprints? Let's talk fingerprints. He turned to the jury. Miles, imagine you go to a dealership. You sit in a car, hands on the wheel, maybe even take a photo. You don't steal the car. You leave. The next day, someone else drives it off the lot. Should your fingerprints make you guilty? They were listening now. Miles, I was at that gas station earlier that night. With friends. Touched the car. It was unlocked and I leaned on it, like any dumb teenager would. But I didn't steal it. I didn't drive it. I didn't flee anything. He paused. Miles, there's no surveillance footage showing me inside the vehicle. There's no eyewitness account that places me behind the wheel, except for the officer whose location data might say otherwise. He let the silence linger. Miles, what the prosecution has is a story. I'm here to show you the truth. Judge Moore leaned back, his face unreadable. Bragg was already shifting uncomfortably. But Miles wasn't done yet. Miles, Your Honor, I also have a statement, submitted to the police but, curiously, not introduced by the prosecution. He walked to the evidence table and lifted a paper. Miles, from the owner of the vehicle, Mr. Anthony Sinclair. It reads, I left my car running while I stepped inside the gas station. I saw the person who took it. He wasn't black. There was an audible gasp. One juror dropped their pen. Bragg's mouth twitched. Miles, not only do I not match the description, but the prosecution intentionally left this statement out. He turned to the judge again. Miles, I ask that this court consider what this case really is, not about a car, but about a system looking for someone to blame. And someone who fit the picture. The courtroom went still. Even Judge Moore didn't interrupt. Judge Moore, after a long pause, will recess until the GPS records are submitted for review. Mr. Bragg, I expect full cooperation. Miles sat down, finally letting out the breath he'd been holding. From the gallery, Monica Brown watched, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. She didn't smile, not yet. But she saw it too. Something was shifting. The buzz outside the courthouse was electric. Reporters clustered near the steps, murmuring about the teenage defendant who cracked holes in a seasoned prosecutor's case. But inside, the courtroom felt colder, tighter, like it had sensed something was slipping through its seams. Miles Brown sat quietly at the defense table. No lawyer beside him. Just a notepad, a folder, and the same unwavering resolve. Beside him in the gallery, his mother, Monica Brown, clutched her purse tightly but made no sound. The court was no longer scoffing. It was listening. Judge Roy Moore entered with less swagger than before. He glanced briefly at Miles, a flicker of respect in his otherwise stern face. He struck the gavel once. Judge Moore, we'll resume. Mr. Bragg, the floor is yours. Alvin Bragg, noticeably more restrained, stood with the GPS report in hand. Bragg, Your Honor, the defense's request to verify Officer Hayes's location was granted. We now have the GPS logs. Judge Moore adjusted his glasses. Judge Moore, and Bragg. They confirmed the officer was not present at the scene during the time he claimed in his testimony. Gasps spread through the room. A low whoa rippled from the gallery. Miles didn't flinch. He stood. Miles, so the only eyewitness account placing me in the vehicle has now been proven false? Judge Moore, it appears so. Bragg cleared his throat, scrambling. Bragg, that doesn't change the physical evidence. Your fingerprints were found on the steering wheel. Miles, let's talk about that. He stepped forward, voice measured but commanding. Miles, Your Honor, was the forensic technician who analyzed the prints subpoenaed to testify? Judge Moore, turning to Bragg, was she? Bragg, no, Your Honor. The lab report was submitted in lieu of testimony. Miles, so I've had no chance to cross-examine the analyst. No way to question the chain of custody, potential contamination, or sample accuracy. Bragg didn't respond. Judge Moore frowned deeply. Miles, if we're putting someone's future on the line based on lab results, shouldn't we ensure those results are trustworthy? Judge Moore tapped his gavel. Then again. Judge Moore, Mr. Bragg, your case is built on crumbling pillars. Do you have any solid ground left? Bragg, visibly sweating, Your Honor, the defendant was arrested blocks away from the stolen vehicle. That proximity, combined with the fingerprint evidence, is sufficient to warrant suspicion. Miles, suspicion isn't guilt. He looked directly at the jury now. Miles, let me tell you what actually happened that night. Flashback, hours before the arrest. Miles and his 3 friends were hanging out after a high school basketball game. They stopped at a local gas station for snacks. Miles, bored, leaned on a fancy-looking G-Wagon parked nearby. Its lights were still on. Door unlocked. Friend, yo, this somebody's whip? You gonna steal it? Us. Miles, please. Like I need that drama. He opened the door briefly, peeking in, then shut it, shaking his head. That was it. They went inside, grabbed chips and drinks, and walked home. Back in the courtroom. Miles, we joked. I touched the car. Then we left. Hours later, someone else took that vehicle. But when officers found the car abandoned, and me walking home nearby, they jumped to the conclusion that I was the one who took it. Miles, voice rising slightly, they didn't ask for security footage. Didn't ask for my alibi. They just arrested the black teenager near the scene and assumed close enough. The courtroom fell silent again. Judge Moore's jaw tightened. Bragg was stone-faced. Miles, and the one man who could have cleared it up, the car's owner, Mr. Sinclair, gave a statement saying the thief wasn't even my race. That was in the initial report, but the prosecution left it out. He raised the paper again. Miles, they hoped you'd never see it. Scene shift, judge's chambers, brief recess. Judge Moore leaned over a folder, rubbing his temples. Moore, to himself, how many cases did I push through without looking deeper? He stared at the photo of Miles. The boy's eyes weren't filled with rebellion. They were filled with clarity. Moore, softly, he should be at Howard or Harvard. Not here. Back in courtroom. Bragg attempted to salvage what he could. Bragg, even if the eyewitness was unreliable and the fingerprint explanation is plausible, we must weigh all the facts. Miles, facts or fabrications? Miles turned to the jury again. Miles, look, I know I'm not what some of you expect when you think of someone who understands the law. But I've been studying this system since I could read. My mom, she worked in the trenches of legal files her whole life. I grew up hearing the cracks in the system like lullabies. Miles, this trial isn't just about me. It's about every innocent kid who doesn't get a second chance because nobody listens. Today, I'm asking you to listen. The courtroom was motionless. Judge Moore let the silence stretch. Judge Moore, we'll reconvene tomorrow for final arguments. As the court adjourned, Miles stepped down from the podium. His eyes met his mother's, Monica Brown, standing now, tears not from fear, but from pride. She mouthed, "You did good, baby." Miles nodded, but his heart was already beating faster. Tomorrow wasn't just the end of the trial. It was the beginning of something more. The sky outside was gray, as if holding its breath. Inside Fulton County Superior Court, the atmosphere was tighter than ever. The jury had been out for hours. The gallery was packed, spectators, reporters, and even law students who'd come after hearing what was happening. A 19-year-old named Miles Brown was putting the system itself on trial. At the defense table, Miles sat still, hands clasped. No lawyer beside him. Just his own strength, and the truth. Across the room, Prosecutor Alvin Bragg looked more subdued. His notes were untouched. His reputation, usually untouchable, now felt precarious. In the front row, Monica Brown sat like a rock. Her face was calm, but her eyes never left her son. Then the door opened. The jury filed in. Judge Roy Moore leaned forward. The courtroom stilled. Judge Moore, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? Jury foreperson, we have, Your Honor. The beat. Everyone held their breath. Foreperson, on the charge of grand theft auto, we find the defendant not guilty. Foreperson, on the charge of resisting arrest, not guilty. For a moment, no one moved. Clapping. A few sobs. Monica Brown buried her face in her hands. Miles didn't smile. He closed his eyes. He exhaled. Judge Moore looked down at the young man who'd just beaten the odds, fair and square. Judge Moore, quietly, Mr. Brown, you have the court's respect. A rare pause, then he added something he never said. Judge Moore, you ever consider law school? Miles opened his eyes and finally gave a small, knowing smile. Miles, already did, Your Honor. Outside the courthouse, steps flooded with media. Cameras flashed. Miles, how did you stay so calm? Did you really know you'd win? Are you going to sue the state? What's next for you? Miles Brown stepped out, hoodie up, eyes forward. He didn't raise his fists. Didn't gloat. He just walked. Beside him, Monica Brown placed a hand on his back. Monica, you scared me half to death, Miles. But you stood taller than most grown men in there. Miles, grinning, had to take a risk, Ma. They walked past the news vans, past the bystanders clapping, past the system that tried to break him. Across the street, Judge Moore stood watching from his car. His expression was not pride, not guilt. It was thoughtfulness. Like something in him had cracked open too. Weeks later, at a community center in Atlanta, Miles stands at the front, a few folding chairs filled with curious teens. Monica watches from the back, arms crossed, glowing with pride. Miles, when I was your age, I thought the system couldn't be beaten. But now I know, it's not about beating it. It's about changing it. And you don't need a law degree to know the law. You just need to care. You need to pay attention. And when they count you out, you stand up anyway. A girl in the crowd raises her hand. Girl, are you going to be a lawyer someday? Miles, smiling, not someday. I'm already working on it. This wasn't just my story. This was for every voice ignored, every file buried, every kid who got labeled before anyone heard the truth. The system may be built on laws, but it runs on people. And people can change. One case at a time. Miles walks away down a long hallway toward a classroom marked Pre-Law Orientation, Georgia State University. As the door closes behind him, the sound of a gavel echoes faintly, not in judgment this time, but in triumph.